So, speaking of how hard sales can be, I mean, there's a ton of sales content, right? Where it seems like there's lots of books about sales. There's lots of content to consume, lots of people out there talking about it, been around for a while, and yet it still seems really, really difficult. Like, why is sales and sales improvement so hard for so many?
I think that's a great question. I mean, I actually really, I torture myself over that. I really do, because like you said, I mean, there is so much good content. There's books, there's LinkedIn now. I mean, that didn't exist when I was starting out in sales. You know, when I was starting out in sales, it was tough to find good content. Now good content is everywhere, and yet you go into a sales organization, and so many of the problems are so core and fundamental and basic. It is a bit of a mystery, and I don't know what the answer is. Um, when I work with organizations, I I find myself having to walk a balance between, kind of where they think they are and where they really are. And I always like to try to start with let's just start with some core fundamental basic questions. And very often when you start digging around at the core basic fundamental level, you uncover some things that are really problematic. And I think a lot of, my own hypothesis about the question is, I think a lot of salespeople, sales manager, and sales leaders believe that, they're kind of up here, and we should be dealing with really sophisticated stuff, and, we should be getting, super tools and all this other stuff. But there's these cracks in the foundation
Mm.
where salespeople are not good at establishing value or articulating the problem, or they don't have solid business acumen, and they don't really understand the customers they're selling to, or they lack some basic skills in terms of effective outreach or qualification, as you discussed.
Mm.
And so the only explanation that I can come up with is that's the disconnect. Is that there's a lot of information out there, but whether it's ego or pride or ignorance or self-delusion, I really don't know what, and I don't want to be condescending, but I think a lot of organizations need to kind of take a step back and say, listen, do we have a solid foundation here? Are we doing the basics well? And in my experience, most of my clients have some room for improvement there. And when they do improve, then they have a really solid platform to build up from. But my own hypothesis is, people, for whatever reason, just don't start there. So, as one of my clients said to me, the problem isn't lack of information,
Mm.
it's execution. And I think that was very insightful. And that's why I stole it from him and continue to use it today.
Yeah, so much of, I think, good sales goes back to your book, right? I think I liked so much about mastering your sales process is that I was a marketing guy for 15 years, and then I found myself running marketing and an inside sales organization, and my head was spinning, right? I had done, sales to the channel, when I ran marketing, but never, B2B, one-to-one sales. And then I read the book and I was like, oh, makes sense, right? It just you put it into those simple terms, and the blocking and tackling, right? It's
Yep.
so much, another, sales sports analogy. You can't do any talk about sales without it, but it goes back to what are the fundamentals,